For nearly 2 weeks, something unusual was happening in the open desert of Saudi Arabia. At Prince Sultan Air Base, a group of large gray aircraft sat on the runway under the blazing sun, clearly visible from the sky and easily identifiable in satellite images. These aircraft were not ordinary transport planes. They were KC-135 stratotankers, the aerial refueling planes that act as flying fuel stations for modern fighter jets. In many ways, they are the invisible backbone of long-range air operations. Without them, fighter aircraft cannot travel thousands of kilometers, remain over targets, and return safely. That means every major air campaign in the region depends heavily on them. What made the situation strange was that their presence was no secret. Satellite tracking had already revealed their positions. Analysts knew where they were parked, how many were there, and which runway they were using. Yet for 11 days after the conflict intensified, Iran did not target them. The aircraft remained on the ground, unmoved and apparently untouched. Then suddenly the situation changed. Reports emerged that several of those aircraft had been struck during a missile attack. 5 tankers were damaged in a single strike. No American personnel were killed, but the event immediately raised serious questions. Why did Iran wait so long before attacking? Why target these particular planes? And what does this reveal about how the conflict is actually being fought? At first glance, it may seem like just another military incident, but when you look deeper, the story begins to reveal something much larger, a strategic battle over the infrastructure that makes modern air power possible. At first glance, an attack on aircraft parked at a distant military base might appear to be a localized event, something relevant only to the armed forces involved. But the reality is far more complicated. Modern wars do not remain confined to battlefields. They ripple outward through economies, supply chains, energy markets, and international politics. The aircraft that were damaged at Prince Sultan Air Base play a role that extends far beyond military strategy. Aerial refueling tankers allow fighter jets to travel far beyond their normal range. That capability allows countries to project power across continents, patrol international airspace, and respond quickly to emerging threats. When that system is disrupted, the effects extend far beyond a single mission. Military planners must rethink routes, logistics, and deployment patterns. But the consequences do not stop there. The broader conflict surrounding these events has already begun to influence global markets. Energy prices react quickly to instability in the Gulf region because a large portion of the world's oil supply moves through nearby shipping lanes. When missile strikes, drone activity, or naval tensions increase in that area, shipping insurance costs rise, and energy traders react almost immediately. Airlines adjust routes, companies delay shipments, and governments begin to worry about supply disruptions. Even events that appear symbolic can send powerful signals. Major sporting events have been canceled, international companies have evacuated staff, and financial institutions have warned employees about security risks in parts of the region. All of this creates a cascading effect. What begins as a military confrontation gradually becomes a broader economic and political crisis that affects people who may be thousands of kilometers away from the battlefield itself. The moment that drew global attention occurred when missiles struck Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. Reports indicated that 5 KC-135 aerial refueling aircraft were damaged during the attack. These planes were not in flight. They were parked on the ground at a base that has long been used to support American operations in the region. According to officials cited in media reports, the aircraft were hit while stationary, making the strike both precise and symbolic. Importantly, no American personnel were killed in the attack, and the aircraft are reportedly repairable. But the significance of the event lies less in the immediate damage and more in the strategic implications. These aircraft were forward-deployed assets, meaning they were already positioned in the region to support ongoing air operations. When forward assets are disrupted, even temporarily, the ripple effects can be substantial. Missions may need to be rescheduled, flight plans adjusted, and additional aircraft moved into position from other bases. In military planning, timing and location are everything. A tanker aircraft stationed thousands of kilometers away cannot instantly replace one that was supporting operations nearby. This means the strike forced an immediate logistical response. Aircraft had to be relocated and operational planning had to adapt. The attack also demonstrated that even heavily monitored military installations are not immune from missile threats. For analysts observing the conflict, the event served as a reminder that modern warfare often targets systems rather than individual weapons. Disrupting the support structure behind air operations can sometimes be more impactful than targeting the aircraft conducting the strikes themselves. To understand the deeper meaning behind this strike, it helps to examine how modern air campaigns function. Fighter aircraft such as the F-15, F-16, F-16 or F-35 are powerful machines, but their operational range is limited by fuel capacity. Without aerial refueling, many missions simply cannot be conducted over long distances. This is where tanker aircraft become essential. A KC-135 Stratotanker can refuel multiple fighter jets during a single mission, effectively extending their operational reach by thousands of kilometers. In simple terms, these tankers act as mobile fuel stations in the sky. Because of this role, they are often described as logistical multipliers. One tanker can support several combat aircraft, allowing those fighters to remain on station longer or travel farther than they otherwise could. Historically, these aircraft have operated with relatively little direct threat compared to frontline fighters. Their missions are predictable, and their flight patterns are often carefully coordinated, but advances in missile technology and long-range surveillance have changed that environment. Bases hosting tanker aircraft can now become strategic targets. When such infrastructure is threatened or disrupted, the entire air campaign must adapt. Aircraft must refuel at different locations, travel longer distances, and coordinate with new support assets. None of these adjustments are impossible, but each introduces additional complexity. In warfare, complexity slows operations and increases risk. This is why targeting logistical infrastructure has long been a strategic approach used by militaries around the world. While discussions about strategy often focus on aircraft and military systems, it is important to remember that real people and real economies are affected by these conflicts. The broader escalation across the region has already produced human consequences. Reports have confirmed casualties from drone attacks and missile strikes in different areas, including incidents that have damaged homes and industrial facilities. In one attack in Oman, people were killed and several others injured when drones struck an industrial zone. In Israel, missile strikes damaged hundreds of residential buildings and injured dozens of civilians. Even when attacks target military infrastructure, nearby communities often feel the consequences. Air raid sirens, evacuations, and sudden disruptions become part of daily life for civilians living near potential targets. Businesses also face significant uncertainty. Shipping companies operating in the Gulf have been forced to reconsider their routes as tensions increase near key maritime choke points. Insurance costs for commercial vessels have risen sharply, reflecting the increased risk of operating in contested waters. Energy companies are particularly sensitive to these developments. Facilities that process or transport oil and gas become high-value targets during regional conflicts. When investors and traders perceive those assets to be at risk, markets respond quickly. The result can be volatility in energy prices that affects consumers far beyond the Middle East. In a globalized economy, events in one region rarely stay contained. The economic consequences often travel faster than the missiles themselves. Another factor intensifying the situation is the broader network of regional incidents unfolding alongside the tanker strike. Reports have described missile interceptions, drone attacks, and air defense alerts across multiple countries in the Gulf region. Each of these events adds another layer of uncertainty to an already complex situation. Military bases in different countries have activated alert systems as a precaution against potential drone or missile threats. In Cyprus, for example, a suspected drone strike triggered air raid sirens near a British military installation. Although several drones were intercepted, the event highlighted how the conflict's reach could extend well beyond its original focal point. Similar tensions have appeared in other areas where missile defense systems have been activated to intercept incoming threats. When multiple countries simultaneously face security alerts, the perception of regional instability increases dramatically. Governments must consider whether their own territory could become involved in the conflict even if they have not directly participated. This uncertainty can influence diplomatic decisions, military readiness levels, and economic planning. For international observers, the pattern of incidents suggests that the conflict is evolving into a broader regional confrontation rather than remaining a limited exchange between specific actors. As more countries find themselves on alert, the risk of miscalculation grows. In complex environments with multiple actors and advanced weapons systems, even a single misunderstanding can escalate tensions further. At the same time that missile strikes and drone activity are spreading across the region, economic pressure is also building. Energy infrastructure has increasingly become part of the strategic landscape of this conflict. Oil facilities, refineries, and export terminals represent both economic lifelines and potential leverage points. One example of this dynamic was the reported strike on Karg Island, a major Iranian oil export hub. Attacks on such facilities are not only military operations, but also economic signals. Energy markets respond respond quickly to any threat against supply routes or production infrastructure. Even the possibility of disruption can push prices higher. This creates pressure on governments whose economies rely heavily on stable energy supplies. Insurance companies that cover shipping routes through the Gulf have also begun adjusting their risk assessments. When shipping costs increase, the price of transporting goods rises as well. That cost eventually spreads through global supply chains. Businesses may delay shipments, companies may suspend operations in certain areas, and financial markets may react to uncertainty. The economic dimension of the conflict therefore becomes another battlefield. Instead of tanks and aircraft alone, the struggle begins to involve oil exports, shipping lanes, and international investment flows. In many ways, this economic pressure can influence political decisions as strongly as military developments. Governments must balance strategic objectives with the financial stability of their economies and the expectations of their citizens. The events surrounding Prince Sultan Air Base also highlight an uncomfortable reality for countries hosting foreign military forces. Bases that provide logistical support can become strategic targets during conflicts. Saudi Arabia has attempted to maintain a careful diplomatic balance in recent years, pursuing economic reforms and regional cooperation while also maintaining security partnerships. The missile strike demonstrated that hosting military infrastructure can carry risks when tensions escalate. Even if a country is not directly participating in combat operations, its territory may still become part of the strategic landscape. Governments in the region must therefore weigh difficult questions about security and sovereignty. Does hosting allied forces increase protection, or does it create new vulnerabilities? How should air defense systems and infrastructure be positioned to minimize risk? These questions are not unique to Saudi Arabia. Several countries across the Gulf maintain military partnerships and host facilities used for training, logistics, or surveillance operations. As conflicts evolve, those facilities can become part of the strategic equation, whether the host nation intends it or not. This dynamic can influence diplomatic relationships and defense planning for years to come. It also illustrates how modern warfare often involves alliances, logistics networks, and political calculations that extend far beyond the immediate battlefield. The strike on the tanker aircraft at Prince Sultan Air Base may ultimately be remembered not simply as a tactical event, but as a sign of a broader shift in how wars are fought. For decades, aerial refueling aircraft have operated largely behind the scenes, enabling long-range missions without drawing much attention. They were essential, but rarely discussed outside military circles. That may now be changing. If logistical aircraft and the bases that support them become regular targets, future air campaigns could look very different from those of the past. Military planners may need to disperse aircraft across multiple locations, strengthen defenses around support infrastructure, and rethink how refueling operations are conducted. These adjustments would not eliminate the capability of aerial refueling, but they would change how it is used. The broader lesson may be that modern conflicts increasingly target the systems that make advanced militaries function. Disrupting logistics, communications, and infrastructure can sometimes be more impactful than confronting frontline forces directly. As nations study these developments, they will likely adapt their strategies accordingly. The events unfolding in the Gulf may therefore represent more than a single strike or a temporary disruption. They may be an early signal of how future conflicts will challenge even the most advanced military systems in new and unexpected ways.